Yeah, hi everybody. Pleasure to be here today. Thanks for having me. I've really been loving all the discussions and talks over the last few days. Hope you find this a little bit interesting. I'm going to tell you a little bit about, not so much the technicalities of GIS. I'm not as much of a spatial analyst and specialist. My background is more marine biology and marine management. But the amazing thing, as a ocean conservation manager at an environmental nonprofit, really the kind of tools that GIS unlocks in terms of our conservation strategies and how we accomplish our goals is really incredible. So MPAs in Canada, where are we at? So I'm going to talk a little bit about nonprofits using GIS as sort of a way to account for Canada's MPAs targets. I think, there we go. So a little bit about us, Canadian Parks and Wilderness Society. We are from the BC chapter. So there's 13 chapters across Canada. We are a national nonprofit environmental group, and we focus solely in protecting Canada's terrestrial and marine spaces. So anything marine protected area or MPA related or marine spatial planning, that's sort of our avenue of where we work. And I got to say, I'm quite lucky. I feel very fortunate to be working in this space. It's near and dear to my heart and kind of gets me up every morning. So it's really exciting. If I ramble on, that's just why, because I'm excited. Now, just highlighting a few strategies that we use: organizing public voices, direct government lobbying, advisory committees, and in-house research and analysis. Now, we use GIS in every one of these sort of strategies. What I'm going to be talking a little bit about today sort of relates to the direct government lobbying and our in-house research and analysis. And just talking about sort of one role that environmental nonprofits can play in the marine protected area arena in Canada. So marine protection today in Canada, it's actually a really great time the last few years to be supporting and promoting marine protection in Canada because in 2015, our federal government adopted international targets to protect 10% of our ocean estate by the year 2020. This was kind of set forth by the International Union for Conservation of Nature. And so all of a sudden, 2015, our federal government had this big, strong mandate, big ticket, winnable, deliverable announcement in 5 years' time to get to 10%. Huge undertaking, considering that we are only about 0.1%. And if you have been involved in any marine protected area designation processes, I'm still working on a handful of ones that have been about 25 years, 30 years long now. So very ambitious. And that's why one of our roles, and the roles I'll be talking to you about today, is sort of the role of being the watchdog. Holding our authorities accountable for not only delivering on these targets, but delivering the quality as well. Because that's, everybody kind of loves the big numbers, especially politicians, and they'll say, we reached it, yay. But once you look within those boundaries, is anything really been improved? Has biodiversity been protected? Are we going to see any positive effects in our marine environments? So what we would count, so as it says here, what counts and what doesn't count, that's kind of an ongoing discussion, especially when we, a big piece of CPAWS BC, one of our strengths is this direct government relations piece, whether that's federal government, provincial government, indigenous levels of government with our indigenous partners on the west coast of British Columbia in Canada. And so in order for an MPA to be effective, it needs to be strong protections, long-term, relatively impossible to reverse, considering we're working within these 4-year chunks of changing governments. That's something that's really important. So we kind of have we have seen this progression of more and more announcements of, we did it, we got another marine protected area in, it adds another 0.5%, 1%, 1.8% to our target. So this is where nonprofits come in, and where we have been using GS a lot, is to really hold our government accountable to what they say they're delivering on. And we see this as really effective because we're getting kind of phone calls from ministers' offices being like, hey, we want to announce this, we really want to announce this marine national wildlife area, but we're not going to do it unless the environmental NGO community is on board, because we don't want to get crapped on in all the newspapers and things like this. So that's where we have quite a bit of capital in here, and so that's a big role that we play. So what Canada would say right now federally, they would say that about 7.9 of Canada's ocean is successfully protected today, and this is a very harsh kind of side of things. If we really were pie in the sky dreaming about what we would want in each MPA, we would actually argue that it's about 0.5% protected, which is drastically different. And so this is just a kind of screenshot from a sort of online interactive map that we created through ARC Online, which my colleague Jacob will be discussing tomorrow in his talk, revolving around engaging the public on MPAs and how we can do that with GIS. So I won't go too much into it, but this is a grab from that, and we have sort of, he'll go into it, but highlighted sort of the different designation types and what we think counts, what we think doesn't count, and there's many ways we can kind of use this tool. So this is another brief look at this tool, and in terms of kind of keeping Canada and the federal government accountable, this is a tool that we've populated and kind of included the shapefiles of each sort of marine protected area, conservation area that we know to exist in Canada today. So geographically, this covers about 7.9% of ocean estate in Canada, but some of it is proposed, doesn't quite have a benefits agreement. Some of it has no kind of sign-on from the Indigenous partners, who traditional territory that is. Some of it is just single species related, and sure can have an effect on that, but we're talking about kind of in situ biodiversity and looking at the kind of holistic ecosystems, not just single species. So our 13 chapters across Canada can use this when they go into a government meeting with Environment Canada, Parks Canada, Fisheries and Oceans Canada, whoever is the agency that has designated whichever space here. So incredibly useful in this way. It allows us at CPAWS BC to conduct our own spatial analysis on Canada's protected areas. So when we have this big chunk that's 140 square kilometers, 140,000 square kilometers, we can really piece it out. Okay, well, what are the strict no-take zonings in there? Because that's kind of technically what we would comment on as being effective protection. And then communicate the reality of effective protection to the public and to decision makers. So this is being this sort of stark watchdog and kind of keeping people on track and kind of creating the political space that politicians need to make the right decisions. And then engaging Canadians on marine ecosystems and why we should protect them. Because the coastline and kind of coastal communities of Canada are obviously doesn't make up the majority of Canadians. So getting people across the country connected to why we should care about these things. So that's it from me. My name's Ross Jameson again. If you'd like to chat about anything marine protected area related, happy to have a chat with you whenever. So thanks very much.